The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
I saw a pale horse.
The beast.
We're told in the book of Revelation.
This is not a human child.
Isn't an angel Satan?
Armageddon is almost upon us.
Order the use of nuclear weapons.
The world is a fine place and worth fighting for.
From one end of the world to the other, I will oppose you.
They're here.
Welcome to the end of the world.
Wrestling not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. This is P.I.D. Radio.
From a ridgetop bunker high above the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, greetings and welcome to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our humble bunker, everybody. It's full of Orioles. It's a baseball thing out there on the deck today. Tournament, and the Cardinals have essentially... They've given it up.
They've given up the field, yes. Cardinals, the Blue Jays never even showed, really.
No,
the Orioles have taken over, although the Hummingbirds, there's no baseball team they call Hummingbirds. Anyway,
there ought to be.
I ruined the joke. No, the weather is gorgeous up here today. Sunshine, and the Orioles apparently have found us. We're now apparently officially on the migration pattern for Hummingbirds and Orioles. So,
well,
amazing.
we noticed the Orioles last year for the first time, and they love nectar. And so last year they were essentially running the poor hummingbirds off of the feeders. And this morning, Derek says, "What's that bird? Is that an Oriole?" And within half an hour, there were 25, 30 Orioles out there, like they'd all traveled together in a big caravan.
Yeah. So it's we're on the tour, the sightseeing tour of the Ozarks.
We're on the
apparently.
tour, so they've just arrived. So I put a couple of dishes out there with nectar in it and some oranges filled with grape jelly and other goodies, and so they're pretty much hanging out on those. And the hummingbirds have they've gotten the feeders back so far.
Yeah. So because it was going to get ugly later.
Oh, man.
Around sundown when the hummingbirds are fighting each other for the feeders, they wouldn't have tolerated those Orioles around.
No, that ain't happening.
Get them out of here.
These are ours.
Yeah. So it's all go out there at the feeders today, which is it's just an amazing view of the colors because they got the indigo buntings out there, and we got finches of several different varieties.
Oh, lots of finches.
And,
we've got bluebirds, of course.
The woodpecker.
And several types of woodpeckers out there.
Yeah. So just an amazing reminder of the creation that God has kind of dropped us into and given us dominion over it. And we've been messing it up for the last 6,000 years.
No. Sam T. Dachson has dominion over it.
Right.
Don't you remember that?
That's right. He's the point on the pyramid.
He is indeed.
Yeah. Well, it's April 29th, 2018. And boy, just interesting things going on. Who would have thought you would ever live in a reality when you would hear the words Nobel Peace Prize in the same sentence as Donald Trump? There are people out there who are actually floating that idea right now.
Because of Korea.
Because of what's happening in Korea, right.
Well, at least he engaged in something worthy of it. I'm not really sure what Barack Obama ever did. Other than just go on tour.
Capitulate. Yeah. No,
Vowed a lot.
Yeah. It's remarkable because some of the people who are saying this, hey, if this happens, and we say this as North and South Korea's leaders, Kim Jong-un and the South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, or Jae-in, I guess, met on the DMZ for the first time and stepped across. First Kim into the south and then Moon into the north. And that's remarkable because they've officially been at war since 1953.
And they've embraced
since 1950.
for photographers. I mean, and they looked happy. They looked genuinely happy with each other.
Yeah. I mean, the fighting, the so-called Korean War ended in 1953 after 3 years, but they never signed an armistice. So that war has officially been going on since 1950. And President Trump, he won't get credit for it from the mainstream media, but Geraldo. No, this is American. Geraldo Rivera is one of the people who said Trump really deserves the credit for getting this done. And when not for getting it done, we don't know what's going on yet. I talked to Colonel Bob McGinnis this past week about this, and it may be another Lucy holding the football for Charlie Brown moment.
Yeah, it might be.
So we don't know. Things are happening, and even Trump in his weekly Twitter storm said, time will tell. Good things are happening, but time will tell. And he's right about that. We shall see. But if things do come to pass and the North has said, hey, we're going to give up our nuclear testing and our nuclear facility. Yeah, okay. At first that seemed like a really great thing, but then a couple of groups of Chinese scientists came out and said, do you realize that the mountain under which they were testing their nukes has collapsed?
Yeah.
Destroying its nuclear test facility?
And it looked like it was going to collapse at least last fall.
Right. So it might be that things beyond Kim's control have led to this moment. But still, if North and South Korea can be at least reconciled, if not I doubt that they're going to reunify, but at least reconciled, because the people living under the Kim regime, who've been living under the Kim regime since 1950, have suffered for it. So if the pressure applied by President Trump, the economic pressure, not just to North Korea, but to China, make no mistake, the trade war, the so-called trade war with China, is at least as much about getting North Korea leashed and under control as anything else.
I would say, too, that there were rumors floating around that during the Pyongyang Winter Olympics, that there were negotiations taking place then.
Mm-hmm. Oh, no doubt. So hopefully this is a good sign. But yeah, it just makes you laugh. And I know, as a Christian, we shouldn't get caught up in politics. I have to keep reminding myself of this. You're good about this, a lot better about it than I am. But it's easy to get caught up in the politics, go, yeah, win for our side. Well, no, our side is God's.
Our side is the kingdom.
Exactly. We live under a theocracy as Christians.
Yeah.
And that's our first loyalty, is to the kingdom of heaven. But it is enjoyable watching progressives try to twist reality around to try to deny what's happening right in front of their own eyes. No, he had nothing to do with this. And I blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I know, what a strange
It's like that MSNBC host, Joy Reid, who's catching all kinds of flack now because they found all of these homophobic slurs that she had posted at her blog, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And she was saying, first of all, somebody hacked my blog. And then, but then they went back to archive.org, and archive.org said, no, this is the way we captured the website, the Wayback Machine, where you can go back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No hack here. And then, okay, so her excuse as of this weekend now is, okay, my website wasn't hacked. But I honestly don't remember. I honestly don't think I wrote those things.
I'm pretty sure someone else was writing these things for me. Ghostwriters. Yeah. And progressives are stepping up because she's a progressive and very anti-Trump and saying, okay, well, she's changed. Let's forgive her. Can you? Yeah, really? Yeah. Okay.
Really?
Well, try.
Anyway,
yeah. Well, anyway. But there are many other things going on in the world. One of the things I want to talk about is an Alexa bug.
Oh,
yeah. If you buy a used Echo speaker, apparently they can be hacked pretty easily.
Oh.
But even the new ones have a bug in them that allows hackers to eavesdrop on people in their homes. Alexa only wakes up when you say her name.
Right.
And she's only supposed to listen until the command is done and she's given you back your information. Turned on that song or whatever it is, answered your question. But there are certain command lines that allow her to keep listening. In other words, she doesn't automatically turn off in certain situations. And this hack allows those situations to be what is the word I want?
Exploited.
Exploited. Thank you. Exploited. Yes, that's the word. Alexa, can you explain exploitation to me? I'm sorry, I can't do that. But that's something you have to think about. And those, honestly, I can see the advantage, especially if you have young kids. I can see the advantage to just being multitasking. Okay, I'm going to do the dishes. I'm going to have the robot cleaning the floors. I'm going to have this doing that.
Sure.
I'm going to, have the baby. I'm listening to the monitor. And my children can say to Alexa, can you play this music or tell me what this means because I'm trying to do my homework and mom's not listening to me or mom doesn't have time. Fact is, mom is pretty busy these days. But when you allow an artificial intelligence access to your home all the time,
right.
cameras, microphones, the odds are pretty good someone will get access to that camera or microphone,
right.
or at least to the data that's being stored.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're not technically telling you the data stored, but do you really think that it's constantly deleting?
Recycled?
Recycling? Yeah, no. It's being stored.
Yeah. Speaking of data, Facebook has been dealing with this issue. This is one of the things that Mark Zuckerberg was testifying to Congress about when he was questioned week before last. But the EU has been putting Facebook through the pace, especially since this came out about Cambridge Analytica.
Yes.
Which, of course, got Facebook in hot water mainly because Donald Trump won. This is another one of those things that would have gone away if Hillary Clinton had won. The EU is putting into place a new privacy law that's supposed to take effect next or at the end of May. And one of the questions that Zuckerberg was asked by the congressman in week before last was whether the user data that Facebook stores would be treated according to the new General Data Protection Regulation of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook said, "Well, yeah, it will. Yes,
okay.
Yeah, mostly
we
yes.
did the nose.
We did the nose." But meanwhile, they were moving the data of 1.5 billion users out of the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Facebook has, for like a lot of companies, because of Ireland's tax laws, which are much friendlier to corporations than they are here in the United States, they moved the data of 1.5 million Facebook users out of their offices in Ireland and back to its global headquarters in California. In other words, out of the reach of EU regulators, just in time to avoid this new privacy law, which goes into effect May 25th. Bear in mind, this is no easy copy and paste sort of thing. 1.5 billion users, that is about 70% of everybody who uses Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Zuckerberg was telling American congressmen and senators, oh, yes, data of our users, totally private, according to the new stricter regulations that are about to go in place in the EU, but meanwhile, we're moving all the data so we don't have to comply.
Well, exactly. I mean, if they were to put all of their servers, say, out at sea, good luck finding somebody that controls the sea, unless, of course, the Lost Treaty, Law of the Sea Treaty,
right.
Is ever ratified, because that has to do with things that take place at sea. But spiritually speaking, the sea has its own domain.
Yeah. And many brave hearts are asleep in the deep.
Well, yeah. Is it William Hertling who wrote the Avogadro Corp? He had the servers at sea. Right.
And using the wave action to generate the power, and then had them guarded, protected against...
By drones.
But yes, by lethal autonomous weapons systems.
Yes, that were taken over by the artificial intelligence that rose up and then copied itself other places, and the copies became sentient, and they were fighting each other. And
William Hertling, Hertling, well worth reading because he's a good writer.
Mm-hmm.
He knows his tech stuff. He comes from the tech industry. And if you want a clue as to who he's writing about in the novel Avogadro Corp and its sequels, Avogadro is a number, reference to a specific type of number, just as...
Rhymes with oogle.
Yeah. Is a reference to a certain type of number.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, yes, it's scary because it's plausible.
Yeah, it really is plausible. Yeah. Another thing that's taking place right now, I have to back up and find. I received a couple of emails from people who've seen this story because the science writers at mainstream media, they don't quite understand DNA. And so when they see something from a research publication that indicates what's being referred to as brand new form of DNA discovered in human cells.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not.
Right.
It's still DNA, and it's just packaged a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's called an eye motif, and scientists have known about it for a couple of decades. They've theorized it. They've seen it in vitro in the labs, and it's been discovered in living human cells in vivo. But they've always assumed it would be there. It's just a transient form of DNA. In other words, when the cell is exposed to different levels of pH, these eye motifs form, and it's a transcription formation that essentially switches off a gene.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to have this transcribed because it's too dangerous out there. Think of this as a little watchdog. No, closing the door. You can't get in here. But there are other forms of interesting DNA it's not always just a double helix that's, in the typical formation. These eye motifs look like little ladders that are sort of sticking up from the main body. And they're also little boxes called G quadruplexes. That it's a guanine-rich area, and this is all part of the junk DNA that scientists just looked at and go, nah, we're pretty sure that's nothing.
It doesn't mean we can just cut those parts out without losing anything.
No, a lot of that has to do with epigenetics and switching genes on and off and protecting the genes. So, the Lord's design is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
In fact, really awesome.
Well, speaking of DNA, there was an interesting story that came out this week about the arrest of a serial killer in California who was found years and years after the fact. I'm going to try to find the story here really quickly.
It's decades after the fact, I think.
It was 1970s and 1980s. The fellow's in his 70s now, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But the way he was found, because of DNA that was submitted to one of those genealogy websites, and here's the thing, not his DNA.
Well, here's the thing. He's the second person arrested for these crimes.
And that's the other part of the story.
The first person was arrested last year on a different DNA search. What happened is that the authorities in California had decided that they didn't have enough DNA to compare this DNA that was found in all of the crime scenes. And this is a really unusual series of crimes because it has to do with housebreaking and rape and murder. So 3 different essentially types of killers or culprits that don't always intermingle. Mm-hmm. In other words, someone who is a housebreaker doesn't always kill.
Right. Oftentimes, if they're breaking in,
doesn't always kill.
Right.
I just found it really interesting that the same DNA was left at all of these sites.
Yeah.
So this Golden State Killer has been
Golden State Killer, right? This was 1976 through 86.
Yeah.
12 murders, 50 rapes, and over 100 burglaries in California ascribed to this killer. But you're right. They are different types of crimes. Burglars usually like to get in and out without seeing anybody. They prefer not to be interrupted by anyone.
Oh, I know. And here's the interesting thing. The guy who has been arrested now is a former police officer, as I recall, which my first question is, did he investigate all of these crimes?
Well,
do we know that his DNA isn't there because of this? But ultimately, the big thing is the man who was falsely arrested last year, he was proven innocent because his daughter came up and said, let me make sure, here's his DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it doesn't match our perpetrator. But, we thought it would. We assumed it would when we looked at the DNA of his relative.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't the person arrested who volunteered this DNA information and uploaded it. It was a relative. Mm-hmm. So when you upload your DNA profile to one of these websites, GedSearch or 23andMe or Ancestry or any of these, if you send it in and it's a database that has the potential to be searched, you're volunteering the DNA of all your relatives.
Right. And this is going to lead to some, I would suggest some legal challenges here because
there are going to be precedents set on this.
Yeah. The fellow who was arrested and charged with this now is named Joseph James D'Angelo. And as you pointed out, it was not his DNA that was submitted to these sites.
It was a distant relative.
Right. He is 72 now. Now, these crimes, again, bear in mind, were 30 to 40 years ago. So, there's no statute of limitations on murder, so he can still spend what's left of his life, but, behind bars. But, the DNA evidence is what led to his arrest in the first place, but it wasn't his DNA. It was a relative's DNA. And, how do there are some protections here that we don't want to see a guy who committed these crimes go free, but on the other hand, what next? Do the police start going through the trash at restaurants or going through your own trash to extract DNA just to see if they can match it without a warrant?
Well, that's the thing. If you watch CSI and shows like that, they often will.
Without a warrant, though?
Without a warrant, they'll take, because if it's in the trash, it's public.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've thrown it in the trash, you've essentially made it public.
That's a bad analogy. But
even if it's public, is it legal to take it? So I don't know. I think at the very least, we're going to see lots and lots of lawyers come in and say, I can make my career by setting a precedent here.
Yeah. This is really curious. Do you have an expectation of privacy when you submit your DNA? But the question is, if it's one thing if you submit your DNA and you did something wrong, but somebody who you're related to, who shares similar genetic profile, and at least at their arrest, I mean, how does that
exactly? Well, work? I assume at this point that D'Angelo's DNA has matched perfectly to that DNA which was found at the crime scenes, but that's not in the articles.
Yeah.
Not the ones I've read.
Well, it is. This is certainly something that is taking us into a new era of police work, and also showing the, science is cool. I mean, okay, this is great. This is awesome. If this will help bring someone to justice who's committed these crimes, great.
Yeah.
But that has to be balanced against how this is going to be used. And as Christians with a prophetic worldview, in that we believe the Bible still has prophecies yet to unfold, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to see how technology like this could be used by a future one world government.
Oh, exactly. And by a future artificial intelligence.
Yeah, right. And to that end, the United Nations has been trying to, they want to build like a global DNA database. Let's take samples of everyone who's born so that we've got this global DNA database so that we can document everybody and make sure everybody gets services and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And also check for, let's see, your genetic profile.
We're really sorry, but you can't have children.
Exactly.
We've got to,
we need to restrict, coming back to one of my favorite science fiction authors, Larry Niven. Back in the 70s, he was writing that was going to be a future thing, probably. The Earth was getting overcrowded, and so we need to make sure that only people with a certain level of intelligence, health, et cetera, whatever other characteristics are determined desirable by a global government, get licenses to procreate.
Oh, yeah. Also, you will get, from the time you're born, you'll be put into certain jobs. I mean, was it Aldous Huxley who wrote
Brave New World?
Brave New World, yeah.
So
I'm sorry, you're an alpha, you're not. Gamma, over here.
Yeah. So it's eugenics, again, coming back. That's one of the concerns about this type of a database. So what are the concerns about having a national health database with, the government having full access to your genetic history? 100 years ago, within living memory of a lot of people here, because some of these programs continued into the 1970s and 1980s, where women were being sterilized without their knowledge or consent because they were deemed a burden on society.
Hitler would have loved to have had access to a national database of DNA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, but that's the Sci Friday program that we did last Friday was all about that. How Nazi science has now just been repackaged as the transhumanist movement.
Yeah. What a world. Oh, total left turn. Did you know that NASA has canceled the moon mission?
I didn't know we'd established a new moon mission.
Well, there was a plan to put a little rover on the moon, on the north edge of the moon, to look around, see what's going on there, see if there was any water or hydrogen that might be exploited for a future landing by humans on the moon, because President Donald Trump has called for a return to the moon. This was in December of 2017. He asked that NASA take a look at going back to the lunar surface. And just a few months after that, NASA announces they're canceling their rover mission.
Interesting. Well, we know from the Obama administration that the real mission of NASA is to promote good relations with Islam.
Well, I know that sounds like you're actually making fun, but the fact is that was one of the missions he gave to them.
Exactly.
It was like, we're giving you money, you're going to do what I tell you to do. Well, at least President Trump wanted them to do things that were sort of within their remit.
Yeah. Space, exploring space, perhaps.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that?
Imagine that.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting. Well, of course, you know why. We're not going back to the moon.
Well, you could...
Because the Earth is flat and it's on the inside of the dome.
Well, there are people out there that are going, yes, that's why.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what politics are playing into this. There are some who are theorizing that it has to do with budget, and apparently it really doesn't. If some of the scientists who are complaining about the cancellation of it said, no, the money is there. We don't know why they've. So I don't know. I'm sure more will come out about this in a few days. But in the meantime, no moon.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there will be those who will try to blame Donald Trump for this, even though his Space Policy Directive 1 instructed NASA to go back to the moon. So, yeah, it is kind of curious that this is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, let's get back to this whole data thing. Mm-hmm. There's an app called Class Dojo that's being used in the UK. It's based in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And schools are using it. School-age kids are using it. And it harvests lots of photos and videos of the kids and helps to, sort of get the kids involved with competing against one another. How do you rate against this, child in your age group? And so it's games that it's all about sharpening a child's skills. Now, I get that. I think that's great. But apparently it's come out that this is all being stored on this data.
Well, duh. I mean, what do they think?
I know. It's like...
I know, right? Why do you think Google is giving away Chromebooks to all of these schools? Because it does everything in the cloud, and everything that these classrooms do through their little Google Chromebooks is being stored by Google somewhere.
Exactly. And look, we're not picking on Google or anybody like that. It's just that the fact is that if it's free, it's not free.
Yes, there is no free lunch.
The social media apps that you're using on your device, they are quote unquote free because they are harvesting your information. You are the product. Yes.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. It's that way with broadcasting. I mean, when I had a friend who wound up, he's still managing the radio station in his hometown back in Illinois. But we were about the same age, and he was working there while I was going to college, working part-time at the other station. And he told me once that the guy running the radio station, which, the competing station back in Galesburg, Illinois, said once, asked him a question once, why do we play music on the station? And being young and intelligent, my friend said, well, it's to attract a certain demographic to the radio station so that no. We play music on the station to fill space between my commercials. But the bigger message there is that the station itself, the music, the programming, is not the product. The product is the audience, the listener. We deliver that to the advertisers because they're the ones who pay. Mm-hmm. So bear that in mind when you're watching television, when you're watching the news, when you're hearing something on the radio. If it's a commercial station, you are the product.
Yeah. And by offering your data to these free, quote unquote, free apps,
right?
You are not only serving as their product, you're also the consumer.
Yes, the internet has taken it to another level because now they can get information on you that newspaper publishers and television news operations only wish they could have had back in the day.
Exactly, but because you are also the consumer, these ads that are generated and give the money to the app provider, you're the one giving the money because you're the one who's clicking on the ad and buying the product. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's a perpetual motion digital machine.
Yeah. And someday will come. We'll tell you what, don't even leave the tank of goo. Just lie in there. We'll hook you right into the internet.
And that's why there are calls for a national free, everything. You get your internet free and we'll pay you.
Yeah.
We'll pay you to stay home and surf.
What do they call basic income?
Yeah, basic annual income or something like that. Yeah, it's being floated in some countries.
Finland tried it, but they've suspended it now. They've suspended the experiment.
Well, we'll see what happens. If it's been tried, I think, in an African country as well. Was it Kenya?
Don't know. I know city of Stockton, California, the mayor there has suggested it as well. Stockton has really been struggling economically, and the mayor there has floated that idea. No, I'm sorry. I just don't see that as a productive thing. If you give people free stuff, we tend to just say, okay, well, then I don't have to do anything. Most of us aren't productive unless it's the difference between starving and not starving.
That is so true. Well, you were talking about being in the goo and just sort of experiencing the web. Well, Facebook is developing a product that gets a little closer to allowing you to do that. It allows you to read emails with your skin.
Okay.
This sort of cast-like device, brace-like device that goes on your forearm, has electrodes in it that allow you to use your muscles and galvanic responses to communicate back and forth, send and receive to your laptop, and therefore read your email. I assume at this point it's pretty rudimentary, as in yes, no, maybe, buy,
yeah,
sell,
lol, rotful.
But the day will come when I think that it will be not so much using your skin as it will be hooked up directly to your brain.
Yeah, because right now, well, that they need to break down the barriers to getting the content into your brain. So if they can bypass a computer and just hook you right in and hook you right into
and if they can bypass your filters.
That's it.
We have built-in filters that the Lord put there to help keep us from being fooled too easily.
A lot of people who would think, hey, being able to connect directly to the web would be great because, then I could look stuff up right on the fly. I could, wouldn't need to stop and look at a screen and, but remember, if you're connected directly into the web, it's a two-way street. And so, you don't want giving someone else 24/7 communication with your brain.
Yeah. Who doesn't? I mean, they can hack you.
Yeah. Even if right, exactly. Even if that was possible. And I think there's some technological issues there that will probably never be overcome entirely. But you're right. If somebody has access to your brain, you can be hacked. Mm-hmm. Why does anyone think this is a good idea?
Well, there are those who would say, especially people who have limitations as far as mobility, that, someone who's a quadriplegic, it would be great if he or she would have access to the internet, just like, we just recently lost Stephen Hawking. Yep. I mean, he had devices that allowed him to speak. I can tell you today, I just finished we just finally published, I should say that, it's only been 3 months, but we published book 4 of the Red Wing Saga. And I've been working hours and hours and hours every day, typing and editing and typing and that stuff. And I don't know if any of you listening type for 8 to 10 hours, sometimes more every day with very little break. It uses muscles and tendons that get inflamed over time.
Right.
It's essentially like tennis elbow, but it's from typing. And mine manifests not in my elbow, but in the insertion point, the tendon that connects at my scapula back here. And so I get this really tender point on my upper back that hurts a lot. And right now, if I try to type, it hurts. So I'm going to have to take a few days off without typing a whole lot. In fact, while we're gone in Israel, I may try to spend as little time typing as I can. I hate that because I love working. I love writing.
Yeah.
It's what I do.
Well, I do too.
So if I could do that with just a brain implant, I could see the advantage there. But boy, don't want to be receiving constantly.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see how that might work because it's one thing to type through your fingers. It would be another to have to mentally think A-N-D space, and
But you wouldn't do that.
Well, I'd have to see how it might work out. But that physical thing though, that's why I use the weird curvy keyboards.
Well, I can't
makes
do that.
A huge difference.
Well, I may have to try my head.
I was just from working in sales, not even writing all the time, just doing data entry. When I was working inside sales, having just a standard keyboard, I would come home at the end of the day with my two left or fourth and fifth fingers on my left hand numb.
That's no good.
No. Well, you remember I went to the doctor. Thought I was having a cardiac event.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you were.
That's tennis elbow. I haven't played tennis in 20 years. What the heck? So, no,
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Typing.
So I'll probably put some ice on it today because it's really been hurting. But
put the curvy keyboard on it.
Well,
it's that good.
I don't like curvy keyboards. Stop mentioning it. It drives me crazy. Trying to type on that thing, it doesn't seem to help.
Well,
this would not help. This
might not.
Probably
that's like I'm saying putting the curvy keyboard on it. That probably not.
Throwing it out would help a lot. Oh, Oh gosh! But anyway, this app, that's being used in schools and by school children in the UK, because it's an American company, it means that Americans are storing the information. So one could even claim, why Americans are spying on British citizens.
Well, yeah, it's probably Probably fine. Yeah, it's probably being done as a favor by the NSA for MI6.
Oh, yeah.
Because MI6 does that in return for the NSA and American
GCHQ,
citizens.
they spy on us all the time.
Right.
And then report the information to our government.
Exactly. Here, we're just going to look at this stuff that we're not supposed to. And if you happen to be looking over my shoulder while I'm doing this, I won't tell anybody. You know, that's how they kind of get around the stuff of, spying on their own citizens. Yeah. Although now it's sort of taken for granted here in the U.S. I was amazed because we were talking about this on P.I.D. radio back in 2006 when whistleblowers disclosed the existence of that special room at the AT&T offices in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
And said the NSA has essentially tapped into the entire country.
Yeah.
It's not a phone tap or a wire tap. It's a country tap. And the major media, USA Today, I think, is where we found the story. I've saved it. It was like May of 2006. And most of the country was like, sneh, bah. Post 9/11, if freedom's not free. If you're not doing anything wrong, got nothing to worry about, that kind of thing. Then in 2013, when Edward Snowden revealed what he had disclosed, suddenly it was a thing. Oh, how can they be doing this? Well, okay, where you been the last 7 years? This is not a secret to anybody. But yet now it's sort of like, okay, yeah, we joke about it. Yeah, the NSA's listening. Ha, ha, ha. They're not supposed to. I mean, this is not according to, they are not supposed, under American law, they're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, the FBI gets to do that, but not the NSA. Right. Yeah, but, left turn, another left turn.
Yep.
Boy, we're all over the place today. Here's a really tragic story. I don't know if you saw this in this folder, honey, but something that's being dubbed the Dutch Serengeti.
Oh, no.
This idea of rewilding in Amsterdam, apparently it backfired. A group thinking that they were doing something good released animals into an open area where they thought they would take care of themselves. 90% of those animals are now dead.
Uh-huh.
Many of them starved to death. Some died of predation, but most of them simply starved. It was a very harsh winter. And look, if you've ever raised cattle or any sort of livestock, you know that when you have a harsh winter, you have to get out there and feed them hay. You have to make sure they have plenty of water and they've got plenty to eat. Well, apparently whoever did this sort of released them and then walked away.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. As I'm looking at the picture of the horse there now, you can count the ribs.
Aren't they sad?
This is...
It is such a tragedy. And one really wise person said, look, if you put up a fence, you have to take care of the animals.
Yeah. There were 5,000 animals in this Dutch experiment, and about 3,400 of them died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it wasn't 90%, but it's a large percentage of them are dead, and it should never have happened. And some of the people who are still proponents of this idea have actually argued, well, that's going to happen at first. As they adapt, it's going to happen. Okay.
Okay. What kind of animals did they put in here? This rewilding, were these animals that were native to?
I don't know. This article does not really give you that information, so I'd have to look further. But at the very least, when mankind decides, and we've seen this here in the United States, areas that say we're going to rewild an area by adding this type of animal back into it.
Yeah.
If that type of animal has been gone for a long time, it is going to be a big surprise to the animals there. Or bringing in a non-native species and introducing it. Don't do that.
Yeah. No, we've seen that movement here in the United States with calls to introduce. Wasn't there a movement back in Indiana a while back to reintroduce wolves?
Yeah, in one of the parks because there were so many deer.
Yeah,
and the local people, the people living in the town nearby, little Brown County, Indiana, they wanted to just let us go in and hunt.
Yeah,
because it had been banned. Just give us a week to go in and hunt.
We'll cull the population.
We'll cull the herd because there are way too many deer to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a call to, no, let's just put a wolf in there. This is a park.
Yeah.
Park where children go to play.
There's a reason that we humans exterminated the wolves that were here before, because they tend to, compete for, our children.
Mm-hmm.
It's, there have been ideas like that floated where they essentially create these wildlife corridors around, basically move everybody back into cities, restrict our population, and then open up vast tracts of North America to the types of animals that were here before. But again, that's just a crazy idea.
It's really dangerous if you're going to have humans going through these areas at all.
Well, yeah.
If it's a big park area or a national reserve or something that has, campgrounds. But even if you don't, if it's close to anywhere within 100, 200 miles of a city, some of these predators have large areas that they patrol, and they will get into your city. If they run out of food, they'll come take your dogs.
Yeah.
And your kids.
Yeah. No, we've kind of gotten used to, in our 20th and 21st century worldview here, in civilized Western civilization, we've gotten used to the idea that we're not, potential victims on the food chain, unless you do something really foolish like go swimming with sharks. But that wasn't the case 200 years ago in this country.
You shouldn't swim with sharks? What? Don't swim with sharks?
Yeah, put that on the list of things not to do.
Oh.
Wolves, big cats here.
Don't swim with wolves either.
Don't swim with wolves. Don't
swim with dachshunds.
Yes.
Oh.
We kind of gotten used to it being a relatively safe place. I mean, we've got a shotgun here because we can hear coyotes at night, and there are a few bears around. We've not seen any in the 3 years we've been here, but I just would rather not have to try to frighten something that large away with a stick, unless it's a boomstick.
Although I can.
That's true.
That big cat was on our back deck, buddy. I got that stick out.
She's got a stick. Run!
She's a small woman with a big stick. Run!
But yeah, so wildlife is called wildlife for a reason. It's not tame. It's not just all cute and cuddly and pretty all the time. And if you turn your back on it, you might wind up getting hurt badly.
So you're saying the Orioles might just take us out?
Well, they might, as long as but as long as we keep putting out the nectar, we're probably okay.
Here's the funny thing. The joke's on them, because you and I are leaving to go to Israel this coming weekend.
We get them hooked.
About a week from now, we're gone.
Yeah. So, ideas like this one in the Netherlands usually come from people who don't really know much about the natural world. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I do, because I'm born and raised in Chicago, so I'm not claiming any kind of expertise.
Well, I was born and raised in the country. I just don't think I would know enough about the way that ecosystems work to introduce...
Start tinkering with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's how we get things like killer bees and, what is it? Carp that they're having to spend millions of dollars in the state of Illinois to try to keep this Asian carp, I think, out of Lake Michigan.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So
very dangerous.
Electrified barriers on the Illinois River. Yeah, because they just overwhelm the native species. Oh, look, it'll be a great food source. Oh, wait, it's eating up all it. And that's the only thing left in the river.
Well, I want to. This is a total left turn. Once again, we'll have to post a map. This has to do with stuff that you're writing. This is not science. It's not even in the news. It's except for the link to the story about 140 children who were found sacrificed.
Oh, yeah. I flagged that too.
Well, that's in here in the folder to talk about, but it connects into research that you're doing, and I'm going to allow you to talk about your book for a few minutes because you are nearly finished.
Yeah.
With it.
Yeah. I think I'll be able to get the most of the first draft done tonight, and then manuscript will be done this week, which means we can go to Israel and then just look at the sites that are relevant.
I know. I get to relax too. Mine is actually published now, so I can. Although I've already started writing book 5, so.
Well, yeah, that's it. Tom wants me to start working on the Amorites book after this. So, am I right? No, Ammo right.
I know,
right. Scientists working in Peru found the site of a mass sacrifice of children. This was just announced this past Thursday. More than 140 children at this particular site, buried alongside 200 young llamas. This is on a bluff on Peru's northern coast. National Geographic reporting this. But they're characterizing this, calling this possibly the last mass sacrifice in history. And, I'm sorry, but I know that's not true. It is not true. I mean, we go back to the classical era, and Greek and Roman historians.
Well, you just said they're calling it the last.
No, largest.
No, you said last.
Okay, sorry, I meant largest.
I knew that because this is only 550 years ago. So
right.
It may be the most recent one, at least that has been discovered. But you're right. These sacrifices go way back, and this is small compared to some of the ones. Right.
Now, they're dating this sacrifice, by the way, back to about 550 years ago. So what does that put? About 1450, 1460 AD.
Yeah.
So, about
the time that Columbus was going over there.
Yeah, but maybe half a century earlier, but not that far away from Europeans discovering North America, South America, and beginning to colonize. So at about that time, the civilization at this site in Peru found it necessary. What do they call it? Probably not going to pronounce this correctly. The Chimu Empire, Chimu.
Probably Chimu.
It was the predecessor of the Incas. The Incas basically took them out and expanded into their territory. But 140 children sacrificed at this one spot. But again, the scientists the archaeologists who have dug this up, calling it the largest in history. Well, Greek and Roman historians writing about a war between Carthage and the tyrant, which is the Greek name for the ruler of the city-state of Syracuse, which is on the island of Sicily. They'd fought a war because Carthage, which was Phoenician, descendants of the Canaanites, had established colonies on Sicily, and they were fighting the Greeks for control. Essentially, it was a war for control of that island, which was a big source of grain for the Italian peninsula. And, of course, it allowed them to control trade in the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians and the Greeks fought over that for a long time. And the ruler of Syracuse, even though they had besieged the city of Syracuse, somehow this guy got an army across into North Africa and showed up at the gates of Carthage. And the Carthaginians freaked out because they thought they had this guy contained, and suddenly he's got an army at their gates. And they determined that the reason this had happened was they had stopped providing the sacrifices required by their chief god, Baal Haman. Now, this is not Baal of the Bible. That's the storm god, Hadad. Baal Haman is actually the Greek god Kronos, the head of the king of the Titans. Mm-hmm. Also identified in my book. I'm going to show how these all fit together. This god has worn many faces over the centuries. He was not only Baal Haman and Kronos, he was the Canaanite god El. He was the Canaanite or Amorite god Dagon. He was the Sumerian god Enlil. He was the Hittite god Kumarbi.
Are you going to put a chart in your book?
Yeah, it's going to be one of the appendices. It'll go into, there'll be Appendix 2, I think. But this was a part of his worship. And the Carthaginians over the centuries, this colony was founded by the city of Tyre, which was on the coast of Lebanon.
We talked about it this morning during the Gilbert House Fellowship.
Study of the book of Ezekiel. I forget exactly when. I think 8th century BC, about the time of Jezebel and Elijah and Ahab and all that. But Carthage broke from Tyre, eventually became independent. Mm-hmm. Baal Haman was the chief god of the Carthaginians. But it got to a point where the wealthy decided they didn't want to sacrifice their kids anymore, so they would go find somebody who was destitute, poor, a poor woman who needed money, and they would buy the child from the poor woman and offer that child as a sacrifice in place of their own child. And according to the Greek historians who remembered this, they said they wrote that the mother of the child who was being sacrificed was required to show no emotion when the sacrifice was carried out. They described exactly how it was done. And if she cried or cried out or showed any emotion whatsoever, not only did she lose her child to the sacrifice, but she didn't get to keep the fee either. So,
that's difficult.
Yeah. Well, when this the leader of Syracuse, the tyrant of Syracuse, had his army at Carthage, and this is about 310 BC, somewhere around there, they went back and sacrificed all of the children who should have been sacrificed, about 200 in all, and then about 300 others in addition to that. So they sacrificed about 500 kids in one shot because of this battle taking place outside their gates. They were so shocked.
Was this the siege of Syracuse? Or before that? This
was after the siege of Syracuse, where the tyrant of Syracuse brought his army across and besieged Carthage.
Because that was 214 BC. Okay.
Well, let me look at my book here. It's in the book. I only wrote the book. I don't remember what's in it. Okay. It's in the section on Molech and Baal Haman. Nope, it's 310.
I was going to say there's another one that's 397 BC.
No, this is 310 BC, according to Diodorus Siculus.
There were a number of sieges of Syracuse.
Yeah. Diodorus and the leader of the city-state Syracuse was Agathocles.
Mm-hmm. That one was in 311.
Yeah. So, according to Diodorus, in their zeal to make amends for their omission, they selected 200 of the noblest children and sacrificed them publicly, and others who were under suspicion sacrificed themselves voluntarily. In other words, parents who, did we sacrifice our kid or didn't we? So anyway, 300 others. So altogether, 500 children sacrificed to Cronus, Baal Haman, all in one fell swoop. So this discovery in Peru, even though they're making this big deal of it, you remember National Geographic is trying to deliver a product to its advertisers, and that would be you. So they're trying to make this as spectacular as possible. But no, the Phoenicians were guilty of far worse than this back in the year 310 BC, according to the Greeks and the Romans. The Tophet at Carthage, which is the name given to the burial site set aside for children based on the name that was used in the Bible, the Tophet, in the valley of Hinnom, the valley of the son of Hinnom, which is Gehenna, near Jerusalem, where sacrifices of children were made to the god Molech. The Tophet at Carthage had over 20,000 children in it. 20,000 children. And archaeologists, for some reason, wanted kind of whitewash that and say, well, no, these were just,
we think they died a natural death.
Exactly. Mortality rates among children are very high in the ancient world.
Yeah, they were, bumping each other in the head and knocking each other in the head, and somehow that's why they look like they have head wounds.
I mean, natural causes. When you slice somebody's throat from ear to ear, naturally they die.
Yeah.
Those who've done the research on this found that the range of ages among children in these Phoenician Tophets, and there are some in Sardinia, which I'm hoping we'll see at least one, just to document or just to see what they look like firsthand. The range of ages of the children found is much too narrow to be natural causes. In other words, there was a certain prescribed age at which these children must be sacrificed to Moloch or Chemosh or Enlil or Baal Haman or whatever. Yeah. It appears that this is an aspect of the Greek legend or myth of Kronos eating his children to prevent being overthrown. And of course, Zeus, Rhea, Kronos' wife, got around that by giving him a stone instead and raised Zeus in secret, who then overthrew Kronos. But the idea of eating the children played out in this child sacrifice.
And we discussed that again this morning's Gilbert House Fellowship in Ezekiel, and we referred to that pillar that
Pozo Moro,
which is so disturbing. It clearly shows a chimeric god, fallen small g god, consuming a child, a little baby inside of a bowl.
Yeah. They're holding a bowl with little legs sticking out, and there's an arm sticking out of his mouth.
And then there's another one off to the right of that image, and I think that thing's got little feet coming out of its mouth.
Yep. And the one on the far right of this image is holding a knife and getting ready to, cut a victim on the table there.
Yeah.
This is from a Phoenician site, Pozo Moro. It's from a Phoenician site in Spain. And in fact, I need to write a little bit about Pozo Moro, add a little section on that in the book, because there's some evidence to suggest that this monument that was found at Pozo Moro was a place where these sacrifices were burned.
And you and I, at least I originally found that monument because I was looking for images of Hernunos.
Yeah.
And he's on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's disturbing. It's in the Museo Arqueológico Nacional in, where is it? It's in...
probably Madrid or...
I'm not sure if it's
Spanish
Madrid,
city.
but it may well be. Yes, it is. It's in Madrid. So the National Museum in Madrid, 6th century BC. So about the time that Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar was breaking down the walls of the temple in Jerusalem, the Phoenicians who'd established a colony in Spain were apparently sacrificing their children.
Mm-hmm. And God was condemning that, saying one of the reasons I'm taking you out is because they're eating your children because you give them your children for food.
That's right. Book of Ezekiel, chapter 23 was one of the chapters we studied this morning. And you're right. That's one of the charges that God leveled against his people in Jerusalem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's disturbing, but sadly, we in the modern world have sort of taken it and turned it into an assembly line process.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very clinical.
Yeah.
It's a woman's right to choose.
Oh, that's disgusting. Well, there are children in heaven who are, they're rejoicing to be with the Father, but that they're, it's a difficult place to put yourself in, but don't put yourself into that situation in the first place, young women. Take the onus upon yourself to make sure that you are never in a situation where you have an opportunity to conceive out of wedlock.
Yeah.
I know, there, but for the grace of God, go I, because we all are prone to sin, but there are some sins you just absolutely risk because you are entering into activities that they are high-risk activities.
Right. And sadly, the culture that we're in doesn't view it that way.
No.
It promotes activity.
In fact, there was it at Fox News? They had the article about the parents who found the biology question for a student. The question was one of those word problems, and instead of saying, person A is this blood type, person B is this blood type, person C is this blood type, the child is this blood type, who cannot be the father?
Yeah, yeah.
Instead they say, so-and-so.
I've got it up in front of me here. It's a multiple choice question. And this was a middle school science class. Yeah. And I'm quoting now. Ursula was devastated when her boyfriend broke up with her after having sex. To get revenge, she had sex with his best friend the next day. Ursula had a beautiful baby girl 9 months later.
Had revenge sex.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what it said. To get revenge, she had sex with it.
Yeah.
Ursula had a beautiful baby girl 9 months later. Ursula has type O blood. Her ex-boyfriend has AB blood, and his best friend is type A blood. If her baby daddy is her ex-boyfriend, what could the possible blood types of her baby not be? Type or types. So they could have asked the question without phrasing it this way, writing it this way.
I know. And this is in middle school. Middle school starts at the 6th grade in most regions.
Yeah.
Can you imagine a 6th grader reading this?
No, I'm sorry. This is 11th grade, but still.
Okay. Still terrible to give the idea that, first of all, having premarital sex is great and revenge sex is fine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say, it following line, she had a beautiful baby girl. Like, oh, isn't this wonderful? Cue the harps.
Yeah. Now, this is the culture in which we live. It's, do as thou wilt. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're right. The best solution is don't be in a situation where this is a potential outcome, because the other options then require stilling a beating heart.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that young men are off the hook.
No.
They have responsibility too, but ultimately the one who gets pregnant is the girl.
Yeah. And
so
our culture
I was always taught, keep your knees together.
Yeah. And us guys were, keep it zipped, fellas. It was that's the irony of this kind of mindset that okay, if you've got a problem, well, Planned Parenthood is there and they can take care of it for you. And so therefore we need to, keep sending our tax dollars to Planned Parenthood so that we don't have too many of the wrong kind. Wait a minute. That's eugenics. Oh, no. It's not eugenics. It's women's health care.
No.
And guys, the only responsibility they seem to have anymore that is, well, how much does it cost? I'll write you a check.
Yeah.
I'll go to the ATM.
$500.
Exactly. This has really put women in more. This has actually put women in a worse position than they were in before. Freedom has actually made them slaves.
Yes, exactly. And it's fed this machine of sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. And sadly, to that end, both the states of Ohio and Indiana had laws overturned by the courts within the last couple of weeks where in Ohio they were going to deny federal tax money to women's health service providers, because there are some women's health services that don't require killing an unborn child, that are provided by companies, but they also offer, like Planned Parenthood. They will also do the abortions. Well, okay, the Ohio law said, okay, if you're going to do these, the abortions, you can't have federal tax money. We're just going to reserve that for these clinics that are doing mammograms and other health services.
Right.
A judge ruled that even though women don't have a constitutional right to access to abortions, that it would unfairly restrict their access to them if we restricted the tax. So in other words, just some legal loophole legal rationale to justify continuing to send money.
Pretzel logic.
Exactly. And in Indiana, the state there had passed a law that made it, that outlawed aborting a child because of a diagnosis of Down syndrome or some other medical issue. And again, a judge ruled that, that places an undue burden on an undue restriction on the right to the right to choose.
Well, there will always be lawyers who go in there to make a name for themselves. Just like earlier we said, the DNA, that is going to get into the courts. Trust me on that one.
Yeah.
We mentioned earlier that, and we also mentioned it on Gilbert House Fellowship, that my new book is out, Book 4 of the Red Wing Saga, and I actually talk about women's, the problem that women face in Victorian England, and especially in the East End of London. They didn't have a whole lot of choices, especially if they were single or, essentially abandoned by their husbands. Sometimes the family, as you say, instead of being offered up for sacrifice, just sent out into the streets to earn money.
Yeah.
There were a lot of reasons why a woman ended up doing that for men.
In the sex trade, right.
And they usually made very little money. They died very young. They often contracted all sorts of sexually transmitted diseases. It was not a pleasant way to live. And I try to address that because in this series I try to teach spiritual warfare, but I also try to teach, frankly, social issues. I try to address those through my characters. So you'll see a lot of stuff with regards to how women were treated during the 19th century. Yeah.
Interesting scene in there where it even gets debated amongst the the good guys as to how it's handled by the police.
How we're supposed to handle it, yeah. And what the perception of the appearances mean. How dare you go into a place like that?
Yeah.
But overall, in fact, the book just came out on the 26th, Friday. It came out. And was that Friday? 27th.
Yes, 27th.
So it just came out on the 27th. I've already heard from one reader who's finished it, and she's reviewed it at Amazon, loved it. But I'm really grateful to all the readers out there who have been looking forward to this book. The ones who are flying through the book already, and like the one reader, Diane, thank you very much, who is looking forward to book 5 now. As soon as no
pressure.
As soon as the tendinitis heals, I'll jump right back in that. But I've pretty much got it plotted out, and some of it already written. So there you go.
Well, we'll put that curvy keyboard on it after I duct tape some ice bags to it.
There you go. That's all I ask.
It's useful. Well, the next few weeks we are going to be away. And we don't have any. We make no promises about being able to record anything while we're away. We might, because certainly we are grateful for the opportunity we have to tour the Holy Land, to tour Rome and Sardinia. leading tour groups. We'll be there with Mike and Drina Heiser. We've got some other special guests that we may be able to introduce during that, but we can't make any promises about a schedule. Because
our job, honestly, is to be there to answer questions.
Right, on the tour. So if we can, we will. If not, well, we'll bring back as many pictures and videos as we can, and I'm sure that some of that will make its way into things that we'll be doing for Skywatch TV, because, again, some of the sites that we're going to see relate to the things that I'm writing about for the book. Mm-hmm. The worship of the old gods. And Mount Hermon is on the tour.
Yep. And then, of course, when we leave Israel and Jordan, then we go to Rome and then to Sardinia. So we'll be with Quayle and Alberino. Yeah. And seeing some of the Phoenician sites on Sardinia, the Neuralgic Towers, the Tombs of the Giants, and the Tophet, hopefully. I'm going to talk to Tim about that, but I think that we'll be able to fit that in too. So, if you don't hear from us for a few weeks, that's why. But you can join us on Facebook. We've got a Facebook group. We hardly ever talk about it, but we probably should. Facebook.com/PID Radio, and we've got stuff there. Of course, the Gilbert House Fellowship also has a group. It's a page. Yeah. I was going to say, we don't have a group. We have a page.
Well, if you follow the page, you'll be part of the group that follows the page.
Also, I have a Red Wing Saga group.
Yes, that is a group.
Yeah, that is a group. It's the Red Wing Saga, and it's a closed group, but it's, just say you want to join it. I'll approve.
Does it have a name like, a murder of crows or herd of cattle? Is it like, clan of Red Wing Saga followers?
Circle?
I see what you did there. So, well, if we don't see you or talk to you for the next few weeks, that's why. But in the meanwhile, be blessed, and thanks for listening. Till next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening. PID Radio is a production of Gilbert House Ministries. The opening theme is adapted from The Alchemist's Tower by Kevin MacLeod. www.incompetech.com. The closing theme is Right Light by Joe Horn and Broken for Good. Find their album Right Where You Stand at Spotify and the iTunes Music Store. Our website is PIDradio.com, where you'll find the show notes, links to our personal websites, and links to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The content of this program is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution No Derivatives 4.0 International License. For more information, see creativecommons.org.
I woke up this morning with some aching in my head. Darkness could have stuck around and filled my day with dread, but it's gonna be alright. Gonna be just fine for me. Turning on the right light, it's gonna set me free. This life seems way too willing to try and knock me down. I just know there's a way I can turn it all around. It's gonna be alright. Gonna be just fine for me. Turning on the right light, it's gonna set me free.